Well, welcome back to the hang gliding files. Today's video is going to be about weather and specifically micrometeorology and how weather and thermals are being represented in Microsoft Flight Simulator. This was kind of spawned by an email I got from Thomas Lowe over at the Free Flight Experience, and he was asking me what I thought about thermal depiction in Microsoft Flight Simulator and whether or not that was going to be adequate for hang gliding. And I gave him a long-winded answer, but actually my real answer was I didn't know. So this video is to explore some of that area of micrometeorology within Microsoft Flight Simulator. We're going to be using the System Update 11, which is the latest update that includes thermic weather and with real thermals, and they're connected to clouds and cloud development. They've also included in some visualization that shows how they are building thermals and updrafts and downdrafts. We're going to be looking at cloud development over time and distance and at altitudes. And we'll try and do the same sort of test later on TFFE because both systems are actually pretty radically different than one another. So what we've got here is we're going to do this using a sample flight, and this one is going to be from Ely, Nevada, a site of many world record sailplane flights. And I'm trying to represent here one of the best soaring days I've ever seen in my life that actually occurred this last summer as we drove through Nevada from one end to the other. The skies looked basically like this. There were thermals all day, dust devils everywhere, zero overdevelopment, and one could have flown 1,000 miles that day. And so hopefully we can represent that soaring condition here. As part of that thing, we'll show spacing, how the cloud development with thermals and the clouds together, and the effect of blue holes. Is there lift everywhere, or is there lift just where there should be? And as part of that, we'll use weather presets to determine our weather and how that has implications in using the app going forward. And at the end, we'll do a little low-level view of weather and winds at specific hang glider sites at ground level, just to see how that overall weather depiction looks when you get down to the ground, and then make a determination whether or not at this point do we think that the simulator is going to be able to do the low-level micrometeorology necessary to do hang gliding. All right, let's get on it. All right, Microsoft Flight Simulator. The weather is determined by the date, time, the place that you're at, and the weather preset that you have set up. You can fly real weather, and that's the best way because it changes over time and distance. But with a preset, it starts an algorithm, and from there, the app generates the weather from atmospheric conditions and sun and heat and all those things as it goes forward. So that has implications for people who want to fly together in a group, and that because they have to start at the same date and time exactly with the same exact preset, and then the algorithm will keep them in sync from that place forward. But you can't go back and use like historical data or real world data without some sort of a mechanism to do that, and Microsoft Flight Simulator doesn't have that. So that's what we do, and this is how you set that up. Okay, once you've chosen a preset and a location and you spawn into the place that you're at, you have weather. And you can always, in the flying menu, go into and see the weather that you're chosen, what's part of your preset. And in this one, we're using our specific Nevada desert preset. And you can set the different wind speeds and direction at elevation, and you can set the clouds and cloud levels. And in this particular day, we have 2 levels of cloud: high level cirrus, lower level cumulus development, with a cloud base of 13,657 feet. That's important. Remember that later. And a temperature of 104 degrees Fahrenheit, and a high air pressure to keep overdevelopment down and keep the spacing down. And with that, we are going to show you just a little bit about what kind of weather and flight conditions something like that sets up. Now, in the open desert like this, with heating, no chance of overdevelopment, it should be just booming out there, but not overly booming, because if it was, it would overdevelop. So there is some spacing in the clouds, as you can see. They're pretty big cloud bases, and you can see the clouds in different forms of life cycles. Some are developed, some are forming, some are dissipating. And seeing and recognizing those types of conditions over distance is what makes hang gliding and sailplanes interesting. Okay, in this first part of the flight, really all I'm doing is I'm not trying to soar, I'm not trying to stay up, I'm just flying along to see what kind of lift I encounter, and whether or not it's everywhere, or I'm just going to, skyrocket up into the air. And obviously I'm not. I'm just, by just flying around and not trying to soar, even though I fly on ridges and into the wind, nothing seems to be taking me to great heights. In fact, if I just continued to do this and just fly around like this, even though there's clouds, I will go down. In here, I've switched on the thermal visualization so we can see a little bit about what that looks like as we're flying around. And in this area, what I'm doing is I'm flying out into a blue hole. And so out in here, there's no real lift, and now I've turned back towards a cloud, and you can see that by the shadow on the ground and the cloud above me. And even though I'm going in there, I haven't hit anything yet until I get to the right spot within the area under the cloud that I hit an actual thermal, so something that you can actually 360 in and stay in and go up. And this indicates that the lift is not generally everywhere, even though those indicators show air going up. They don't result in thermic lift. But when you're in a thermal, and they get a little thicker, I guess you can say. But the real thing here is to demonstrate that, yes, indeed, cloud development is directly tied to the ground level of heating and thermals. So here we are, we're almost at cloud base, up over 14,000 feet, which is above the indicated cloud base. And that's because the algorithm that the app is using, the simulator is using, is taking into account the weather conditions and how that evolves over time. So cloud base even is higher than 14.5. It's probably 15 or so. So here we're going to fly and try and get to the next thermal. And the way you would look for your next thermal is by looking at the clouds, not the ground or anything else, but where the clouds are developing. And that's how it should be. You should fly clouds. You shouldn't fly the ground. So we're going to fly to this next cloud out in front here. And you can see as we left that thermal and we go interthermal that the visualizations dissipated and went away. And here, as we enter under the clouds, we start seeing those visualizations again. But at this time, I'm not in a thermal. I'm just getting under the clouds. The cloud lift should be at the leading edge towards the windward side. And as I come out the other side here, and it gets to the leading edge of that cloud, we start to get lift, and lift that you could use to thermal in. So if I was thermaling in the back part of that cloud, I would not go up, and if I thermaled in the front part, I would. Here we go out into open blue sky. Same weather conditions, same presets, not a cloud in the sky anywhere to be seen, and in our general area, they're around us, but not where I am. And as I glide out into the open blue hole, it's a constant set of sync, which is what should happen. Even in great conditions, you should find areas of no lift, and we do. So this is pretty realistic. And as we go along here, as we get lower, we start to see a few more visualizations of, I'll just call it wind because I don't think it's actual lift. So as we're flying along here, here's a ridge. There's intermittent lift. You can see it bouncing around. This one looks like it's a blue sky thermal. And as I'm thermaling in it, it kind of indicates that. But what it really is it's just gusts. I could have stayed in that area and never got up, even though the Vario was pegging at certain times. And that's just wind gusts on a windward side of the ridge. It's not a real thermal, and it's not a blue thermal. It's just turbulence. So now we'll fly down the ridge a little bit. And you can see once you leave the ridge, you leave the visualizations, you come back to the ridge, there's the visualizations. Those are not thermals, it's just ridge lift. So that's the visualizations that they have, I think represent wind more than they do, thermals themselves per se. At this point, we're going to go try and see if we can do a little low save type things, do the thermals reach to the ground, and here we are, we're getting lower and lower and lower, heading out towards a cloud. And so far nothing. We hit a little bit of lift at the down low, and you can see that here, and it's pointing back up at those clouds. And it would have been possible to make that low save. For sure you could have done it in the hang glider, but I didn't attempt to do it in the sailplane. We just doing a demonstration here. And on this particular day, Don and I did probably 300 kilometers over 4 hours in VR. So even though on this particular demonstration we didn't get up and do a long distance, we've done about 50 miles or so. The indication here is that, yeah, even on a great day, you have to work for it. And here we are, we're going to fly towards this range, and we're on the leeward side of the wind. The wind is on the other, coming from the other side of that ridge, so we're on the bad part of the ridge. And what this little sequence shows is how ridiculously good of a glide ratio sailplanes get. This is not something that you could do in a hang glider, but you can do in a sailplane because of the energy retention and this unbelievably good glide rates that they get. So you could just go long distance like this in just virtually no real lift, and that's just glide ratio. All right, and there we put her on the ground. Okay, now we're going to take a look at some ground level weather, and to do that we're going to use this drone type aircraft. And to do that we need to go to actual hang glider sites, and here we are at Point of the Mountain north side, flying in. And we also need a tool that's going to allow us to teleport ourselves to these locations, and we'll show that as well. This is Point of the Mountain takeoff, in a 16 knot north wind that's coming straight in, and we can see the visualizations there being represented. This is a sample of our prototype tool that we use to create a database of takeoffs, landings, setup areas, so that we can come back to them later, and you'll see that used throughout the demonstration here. So here we are, we've taken off of the point, and you can see the low-level wind vectors and how they're pointing, and it looks to me like it's indicating some lift, but I don't see anything right here on the bench. Here we see the top landing area of the bench and how it's represented in Microsoft Flight Simulator. And what's important here for low-level weather is this is wind shadowed and compressed, so we'll have to see how that works. And again, we're going to capture this in our prototype tool. Now, this is not how the look and feel is going to be. This is all pre-beta. We're just trying to determine functionality and what we can and can't do. So take all of that with a grain of salt. Well, part of low-level flying is landing as well. So down below is the bailout area for the point, and it also needs to have some valid representation of wind and how it's related to the ridge above. So this is what the bailout area looks like as he would come in. It's actually represented pretty good in Microsoft Flight Simulator, and it'll be interesting to see how the weather and the winds are represented on this landing zone as well. Well, again, you see me using our tool to just capture this data and put it into the database. And the point of this exercise is to build a tool that we can use to on the fly create complete sites and locations and information that we can later return to and use that to go anywhere on the planet, and we need to be able to share that with each other. Here we see a pretty good representation of what it would be like to fly the bench here at this low level. There's no visual indications of whether we're getting lift here or not, so I still don't know. We do see the wind vectors out in the distance. Can we soar at this level with this kind of weather? Still undetermined. Well, here we are at the south side, at the setup area, and you can see actual glider images on the ground that were captured by the satellite imagery. The AI doesn't know how to represent a hang glider, but you do get the images on the ground, which is kind of interesting. Well, I like to save all this information as I go through a site like this. So this is just kind of an example of the level of effort it takes to capture multiple sites, multiple launches, multiple landing areas on a single site database, because a lot of sites are complicated. They have multiple launches, multiple LZs that handle multiple directions, and as a hang glider pilot, you need to be able to choose and go to any of these places on a given site. And this whole site is really the point of the mountain. It's got a north and a south face and two distinctly different places to set up, launch, and land. What I find really amazing is the level of detail and realism I see on a site like here on the south side. This is what it really looks like. If it's a flyable site, that's going to be quite spectacular. Well, once we have complete definitions of flying sites and we have the ability now to use that information to transport ourselves from point to point to point within the simulator, which you don't have normally in the simulator because it works off of airports. So this gives us the ability to operate as hang gliders using our own hang glider sites and the way and means to move to and from a site. So here we just teleported to the setup area on the north side that we saved earlier, and we'll be able to teleport and go to any other of the landing areas, setup areas, or launches that we have defined in the database. So that's our goal, and by doing that we can find out whether or not this weather is going to actually let us hang glide in Microsoft Flight Simulator. Well, here's what happens when you teleport to a site that is not fully rendered in the current cache of the simulator, and as you pop into the simulator, that takes a while for the simulator to catch up and actually get the ground details and the mesh correct. That could be an issue going forward. Well, did I answer Tom's original questions to me? Again, the long answer is no, but I've done what I can to evaluate it, and I think that, yeah, I think hang gliding is going to be possible with the effort we're putting into it in this simulator. I hope you want to follow along and see how we go on this journey. If you do, like and subscribe, and we'll just keep putting videos up. We're not keeping anything from anybody. We're going to freely share everything that we develop, and hope to see you guys out on the flying hill later.